Hello and welcome to the channel. Today we will be talking about a historic country whose history is weirdly a lot older than the country itself. I am talking, of course, about Italy, the country in which I live. And its unification story is one of the most interesting parts of European history. Talking about European history, I have done many videos on European history so far, and they're all down in the description of the video down below. And while you're there, you can also like, comment and subscribe if you haven't yet. Let me know what you want to watch next by commenting down below. You can also hit that notifications bell which would let you know when my next video is out. Please subscribe as well if you haven't yet. This is part number 1 of 3 parts of the Italian unification story. Let's get into this. Now, even though Italy became a kingdom in 1861, like many things in geopolitics, it's a process. Now, bear with me for part number 1. It can be a little bit tedious, but it is important, and I can guarantee you part number 2 and part number 3 have some epic events. So, we're going to take the somewhat scenic route to get to the end result. But to do that, we need to start off with a Corsican man. The man would become a French emperor, Napoleon Bonaparte. I've also done a video on him if you'd like to go watch that. So we actually start the story in 1815, once Napoleon had been defeated at Waterloo and forced into exile on St. Helena. But during his 11 years as French emperor, he became the supreme military leader in Europe, and he had the power to redraw ancient borders of city-states in Italy as an attempt to unify different parts. But Napoleon's defeats pretty much meant that all of this was nothing, because in 1815 there was the Vienna settlement, and it redrew the ancient lines, the ancient borders of these city-states. Remember here, Italy is not yet a country. It had a collection of kingdoms, dukedoms, grand dukedoms, papal states, and many of them were under the rulership of the Austrian Habsburgs and the French Bourbon powers. Now, when we're talking about foreign powers in Italy, we have to talk about Austria and the Habsburg dynasty. They were given a kingdom called the Kingdom of Veneto Lombardia in Italy, and pretty much with this overlordship of Italy, because not only did they hold this a kingdom, but a number of the Italian states were allies with the Austrians because they needed protection from other big powers. And the only truly independent place in the country at that time was the Kingdom of Piedmont Sardinia, which was ruled by the royal family of Savoy, or Savoia in Italian. So as early as 1815, we can see 2 sides starting to form. Why were these 2 sides our real protagonists of this story, Austria Habsburg and Piedmont Sardinia Savoys, getting ready for something to happen? Well, you see, the victories of the Napoleonic Wars gave Austria the right to control the borders and had monopoly of the lands. But the liberal ideals of the French Revolution in 1789 had spread through the Italian peninsula. The biggest ideal was that of nationalism, where Italians should see themselves as just that, Italians, and dismiss any foreign rulership and be ruled by Italians for Italians. Of course, this didn't go down well with the numerous kingdoms, dukedoms, etc. that were ruled by non-Italians, and they reacted to this, giving them the title of the reactionaries, as nationalist ideas were shut down in a period called the Risorgimento. This led to nationalist ideas going underground. People started to form secret societies such as the Carabinieri, not to be mistaken with carbonara, the famous pasta dish. The Carabinieri began to develop as a secret society in the south of Italy, and it was active from the year 1800 to 1831. These secret groups, like the Carabinieri and Giovani Italia, Young Italy, which was led by Giuseppe Mazzini, who's a person we will return to later on, started to work together, and in 1820 and 1821 they wanted to gain more freedom and attempt to bring Italians together for the first time since the collapse of the Western Roman Empire some 1,400 years ago at this point. These secret societal groups started to form uprisings against the foreign rulers in order to force through liberal reforms which would give people more political sway. For example, in the Kingdom of the Two Sicilies, which was ruled by a younger branch of the French Bourbon family, the people in the south of Italy wanted more liberal constitutional monarchy. But the people in the island of Sicily wanted independence altogether. So yes, uprisings were launched and revolts were had, but in true Italian style, no one could really agree on anything. They wanted change, but change to what? This gave the Austrian Habsburg army time to gather together and understand what was happening, and they went and crushed the revolts, showing the Italians who was the real boss in the area. We must remember here that Austria had one of the biggest empires in Europe at that time. Well, in the kingdom of Piedmont-Sardinia, the one and only truly independent Italian state, it wasn't all smooth sailing there either. In 1821, there was an anti-Austrian liberal revolt. Here we see Italians revolting against Italians because people understood that the archaic times of absolute powerful kings was over, and the king of Piedmont-Sardinia, Vittorio Emanuele I, was forced to abdicate his throne because he didn't want to bend the will to his people. His brother, Carlo Felice, became king from the very second of the abdication, but Carlos Felice was in Modena at the time, and that was not part of his kingdom. So his cousin, Prince Carlo Alberto, who's an important name which we will return to later on, became Prince Regent. Carlo Alberto immediately set up a constitutional monarchy for his cousin Carlo Felice, who sent back a letter telling his cousin that if he had an ounce of royal blood still in his veins, he would revert his actions and give him absolute power. When Carlo Felice arrived in his new kingdom, he banished his cousin Carlo Alberto and his family to Florence. The Savoy dynasty was sent into crisis because the abdication could have been seen as unvalid because it was forced on the old king, Vittorio Emanuele I. But anyway, Carlos Felice was the new king, and Piedmont Savoy decided they're going to join up with Austria because there were some liberal ideas starting to form, and Carlos Felice wanted absolute power, so he crushed the liberal ideas in his own kingdom. Over the next decade, in the 1830s, there were one or two revolts, but nothing like the 1820 and 1821 revolts, and instead people started to accept their place. There was also a stagnant economy, as it lacked growth in the Italian peninsula, except for the kingdom of the Two Sicilies, which was now an established kingdom, and it gained the support of the British monarchy to seal its legitimacy. By 1830, the ideals of the July Revolution in France, which saw Louis-Philippe the Bourbon prince become king of France as a constitutional monarch, he would also be the last Bourbon king to sit on the French throne, but anyway, the ideals of this revolution from France spread to Italy, and the Italians began to believe perhaps the same thing could be achieved in Italy, a unified country under the leadership of a constitutional monarch. In other words, the Italians wanted a kingdom but was democratic. So, by 1831, they tried to have uprisings and revolts to put this type of government in place, and many liberals fled to France because it failed, including one Giuseppe Mazzini, the guy who started Giovani Italia, Young Italy. Unfortunately, one of the biggest issues here was that, like in ancient Greece, the Italians believed they were linked to their city first and foremost. For example, if you were to ask an ancient Greek person where they were from, they would say they are Spartans or Athenians, and then Greeks. The same was with the Italians. They were Milanese or Romans before they were Italians. Even if you look at the diverse foods, customs, traditions, and the dialects of Italy, of the Italian language, they're all different. Even today, when asking for a Coca-Cola with a straw in Italian, it would be posso avere una Coca-Cola con una cannuccia. But in Florence, you'd have to say posso avere una Coca-Cola con una hanuha because of their accent. If people had no ability to communicate correctly, it's hard to unify them. If they're different, it is hard to unify them. We know that Italy became a country, and by the end of the unification process, Giuseppe Mazzini claimed that now they had made Italy, they needed to make Italians. But people in Italy knew very well of the Roman Empire and the Renaissance, and they all nearly despised the Austrian rule. This meant that nationalist ideas started to grow even more in the 1840s. But like I said, classic Italians didn't know what they really wanted, with the main protagonists having no idea what to do and how to unify their country. How on earth would this nation be unified? Find out what happens in part number 2 and part number 3 of the Italian unification. I really hope you enjoyed that. Thank you so much for watching. Like, comment, subscribe. Let me know what you want to watch next in the future. The more you know.